Hello, people. Welcome. I invite you to make your own choices about whether you want to be on or off video for this session. Great. And for the sake of my own ease, I'm going to go ahead and hide your screen for myself if you're off video. And so that means I will be looking at myself, of course, because that's what we all do here on Zoom. And then I'll also be looking at the faces of the people that I can see. And I will try my best to be mindful and inclusive of everybody that is here. And I've been training and teaching and presenting on Zoom, like all of you, definitely since shelter in place first began, although not much before that. So, I've had a little bit of experience now, but what I can say is that as it turns out, I, like a lot of you probably, it turns out I get so much of my information and I connect and I get so many cues through what I see in people's faces or even their backgrounds, whether or not there's a dog running through or a child yanking on their shirt sleeve or whatever is happening there. It gives me tons of information and makes me feel connected. And I'm doing my best to also remember and imagine what the rest of you are doing and thinking and feeling, experiencing, and where you're zooming in from. So welcome. And with that, I will say that all parts of who you are welcome here in this session, that self-defense, in some ways, more than anything else, is about all of who you are being welcome, that it is about who we already are, what we've already done to survive. It's about bringing all of ourselves into every moment as much as possible so that we can, as much as possible, stay awake and aware and keep making choices and decisions from a place of awakeness and awareness. So there's no reason to set aside or leave behind or set down any part of yourself when you're here. So thank you and welcome. So I'm going to say that I'm going to give you a welcome and open an overview of a little bit of myself and kind of how I want to invite you all to be thinking about experiencing and learning self-defense here. And in order to do all of this, I'm standing up. You could be standing up if that's available to you and if that feels good at this point of the day. You could also be sitting down or even lying down, reclining or making your lunch or doing whatever it is that you need to do. And I am going to be inviting you to do some exercises that are mental, psychological in nature, some exercises that are verbal. And for the most part, because this is a short session today, when we do the verbal exercises, for the most part, I'll ask you to mute yourselves and practice saying things out loud, but we won't necessarily be listening to each other in today's session. You'll hear me, but you won't necessarily hear each other. And then I'll also invite you to do some things that are physical that are you're gonna get to use your body however you can, what's available to you, however you see fit, whatever you choose to, what feels right. And I encourage you to push whatever boundaries you have around that kind of stuff today and just see how it feels. So welcome to Community Self-Defense. I'm signing on today from Oakland, California, and I am on Wichin Ohlone land. And this land was never ceded to the white settlers that came after. And that's incredibly important and relevant to the work that I do in self-defense, because it means that at the hands of manipulation and violence and coercion, that this land eventually ended up being settled and overtaken by first white settlers and then waves of all kinds of other settlers. And so when I'm teaching self-defense, when I am teaching people how to recognize, become aware, prevent violence from happening in their lives, how to respond to and defend against violence that is happening in their lives, and how to think about how and why violence does happen so we can create a world where there's less violence. When I think about that, when I'm talking about it, teaching about that, it directly connects to starting by acknowledging that we are all a part of that system and that continuum of violence in some way. And in some ways, we're benefiting from it. Just the land that I'm standing on benefited from that. So it helps me to stay humble, to remember that I am in all sides and all parts of this continuum. I'm not an innocent outsider or an innocent bystander when it comes to violence as it exists in our society. I have a part and I have a responsibility. So that's kind of my basic stance on understanding sort of my place in the world of self-defense and the continuum of violence. So I invite you to try that one on for yourself. Think about what that might mean. Maybe look into, what land are you standing on where you're zooming in from, where you live and walk your daily life. So my name is Aminta, and it has a mint in the middle of it, Aminta. It's an unusual name, an ancient Greek name. And in order to connect with me in the chat here, you could find my name and chat to me if you wanted. I'm not very good at tracking the chat, so I asked my moderators and support folks to also keep track of that a little for me, because I might not read it until afterwards, but they will bring up questions if there are questions especially that come up. But I will say that, that I do care about your questions and your concerns, and that when we are addressing directly violence, and especially when we are connecting violence that we might all experience to some of the roots and causes and conditions that create the opportunities for violence to happen, that lots of strong feelings can come up. So I invite you to take care of yourself in a way that works for you. And so for some of us, chatting is that way. It helps to get it out of our system. Be mindful when you're doing that there are others here also tracking the chat, tracking it better than I'm tracking it, and that our words do impact each other. As it turns out, sticks and stones can break our bones, and words will also hurt us. So just think about that as you're thinking about how you communicate during this class. So some of the identities that I come here with today are as a light-skinned woman, as a mixed race and Black identified woman. And that is incredibly important to how I think about and work with self-defense. And I invite you all to consider your own race, racial identity, and color, to consider that that's an important part about how you think about how you defend yourself. That my racial, cultural, and color identities, that they operate on several levels, and each one of those levels is a level at which we enter self-defense. So that internal level, the internal experience of I walk through the world Black identified because of how I was raised and where I was raised, what I was told, and on some level, also because of some epigenetic understanding and reality. So my ancestors and what they went through, my forebears, transmitted to me information, sometimes genetically, sometimes directly through storytelling, through warnings, through admonitions, through describing to me what my limits and parameters were in the world, that make my internal experience very much of a Black identified experience. It is also, it's my responsibility to think about, so who I am and how I identify impacts my experience of relative safety, security, how I move through the world. It is also true that how other folks see me and experience me impacts my safety, security, and how I am able to move through the world. So it matters that I'm light-skinned. It matters that I'm mixed race. It matters, when I'm making choices and walking down the street or thinking through scenarios about what may or may not be safe or dangerous for myself. It matters how other people perceive me as well. So as a person who's committed to dismantling white supremacy, and a person who is committed to teaching other people how to defend themselves and hopefully prevent violence from existing in their lives, that one of the things that I say is work hard, make a priority to get really comfortable with thinking about and talking about how you perceive yourself and how you are perceived. That it's my responsibility to be aware of and be able to work with the skin that I am in order to keep my own self safe. So I welcome you to think about that right now. So we're going to start with a moment of settling and mindfulness, almost like a little meditation. And this is a way to activate the first aspect of self-defense that I'm going to be working with you all on, which is the aspect of awareness. So the first aspect of awareness is connected to what I was just talking about sort of being comfortable and familiar, facing head on, being clear and specific with the skin that you're in. So start that awareness by just going inward a little bit. So you could close or lower your eyes, or you could keep your eyes open. So I'm going to keep my eyes open, and I want you to just take a look at your own hands. Maybe flip them over, look at the fronts and the backs of your own hands. And here on Zoom, sometimes I actually can look right at my own self on the screen if I want to, but sometimes that makes me feel self-conscious and uncomfortable. So just looking at my own hands is helpful. And then relax those arms down after you've taken a good look at your hands. And now I want to invite you to become aware of your own body. And you could let your lids slightly close if that helps to reduce distractions, or you could close your eyes completely if that also helps. And noticing your own breath. Noticing your own heartbeat. Noticing without trying to change them. Are they faster or slower than maybe usual? And as you bring attention to your breath and even to your heart, notice if maybe there is room for a slowing or a deepening. And using that time, that little moment of pause, to become aware of the whole body. Becoming aware of your feet, wherever they are, tucked underneath you, balanced on the rung of a chair, or if you're standing, maybe on the ground, on the earth, inside of shoes, or barefoot, or in socks. Bringing your attention to your feet. And so much of what it takes to defend myself is connected to standing on solid ground. Standing on the solid ground of my own identity. Standing on the solid ground, literally the earth or surface or floor that I'm walking on. And becoming comfortable and familiar with what it takes for me to feel that my stance is solid. So slightly bending your knees if you're standing, and if you're still seated, then also finding a seat that feels stable. So maybe shifting around a little bit, bending those knees or wiggling that bottom on the seat to find a stable ground. Maybe widening the stance a little if you're standing, and even widening the feet a little if you're sitting, widening the seated position to have a stable base from which to operate. Great. And bringing some attention and awareness now to your head, to what's above. And part of what self-defense is about connecting us to the realm of infinite possibility and infinite choice. That it won't always be that all things are available to me in every moment, but I do want to be able to make choices whenever possible in any moment. And some of that exists in the realm of the mind, and some of that exists beyond, into the sky. Some of that exists in creativity. So some of what self-defense is about being open to creativity, being open to the unknown realms, to, I don't know what exactly I might come up with in the moment. I don't know what I might try or do or choose, but I want to be open to it. Right. And then taking a moment now to connect to the spaces to the right and left of me. And for right now, most of us might be alone where we are, or at least on this screen in this Zoom alone. But so much about what it means to practice and participate in defending myself and in community self-defense is about staying aware of who is to my right and who is to my left. Who am I with? So sometimes I'm not with them physically. Right now, I'm not with them physically, but who am I with? What communities am I standing with? Or even more specific, what loved ones? Which of my loved ones am I fighting for? Am I defending? Which communities am I standing for? Am I defending? Connecting to how our connections to other people sometimes is where we find our motivation to defend ourselves. It comes through the motivation to defend others, to defend loved ones. And then connecting for a moment to the back of your own body, the back of your own head, the back of your neck. Sometimes those hairs standing on the back of the neck is how we talk about intuition. The something that we know that we didn't know why we knew it. I just had a bad feeling. I had a sense there was something not right. I don't know how I knew it, but I knew it. Connecting through the back of the body to the things that we know without knowing why we know it. Some of us might believe that that's connected to ancestors or those that came before us or our teachers. And self-defense is so much about learning and then passing it on, that it gets transmitted person to person to person, down through a long line of teachers and students, not formally proclaimed or necessarily certified, but willing to share the way that parents share with children and grandparents share with grandchildren and ancestors share with us here. And then bringing your attention to the front of the body, to possibility, but also to acceptance of what is. Self-defense, to some extent, the most daily working aspect of it that I invite you to join in is acceptance of what is. Being able to see really clearly what is happening right now and what is not happening right now. So developing a clearer vision and a clearer sight, freed from some of the distractions like prejudices and biases, and even prior experiences that we might bring with us. Some of those bring wisdom and insight, and some of those actually bring confusion and clutter. So it's our responsibility to maintain our safety and the safety of our loved ones and community, to be aware of who we are. And that's centered here somewhere in the front of the body. And then I want to ask you to complete this sentence for yourself. I am worth defending because I am blank. You can complete that sentence with whatever comes to mind. I'm worth defending because I am lovable. I am worth defending because I am powerful. I am fierce. I am beautiful. I am shy. I am scared. I am determined. Think of one for yourself or borrow one of mine for the day. I want you to take a moment now to say that in your head again, so you know which one it is. I am worth defending because I am. Great. And then wiggling your hands and looking around. If you had your eyes closed or lowered, you want to give yourself a chance to look around your space, maybe gaze at something far away, something medium range, and then bring your eyes back to the screen if your eyes were away from it. Great. Hi, nice to see you back. So all of that we just began with is where all self-defense begins. It has to begin with the self and with a sense that each of us knows that we are worth defending, and starts to practice getting very clear about what it is that we are defending. And if I have to start with the simplest quality in myself, and if the first thing that is activating and motivating me is that sense of connection to others and community, then great. If it's about a responsibility to teachers that came before me or parents that gave me something and I want to protect it for their sake, then fine. If it's a sense of connecting through the land to the earth, it doesn't actually matter where you find your point of entry or your connection. But what I do want to challenge you all to do is to find a way. If you couldn't complete that sentence just now, find a way to complete that sentence, by the end of the next 22 minutes, if you have it in you. So that is, in some ways, how we set the ground for the mental, psychological mindset of where self-defense lies. And for some of us, that might be where the hardest work is. And then for others of us, that is clear. I know for sure why I'm worth defending and who is worth defending and what I'm fighting for. And I'm just not clear about exactly how to do it. So some of where that starts is from one of the most important tools in self-defense, which is in the voice. So what we were just practicing was the first kind of bucket of tools, which is around awareness. There's a second bucket of tools, which is around assertiveness. And then a third bucket of tools, techniques, and a really important fourth bucket of tools, which is recovery. So awareness, assertiveness, techniques, and recovery. There is none of those that is more important than any others in preventing violence from happening to us. There's none of those that is more or less important than any of the others in helping us survive violence that we encounter. And there's none of those that are more important in helping us actually get through it, pass it on, bring others into what we've learned. But each of us can identify for ourselves, which is the one I need to work most on? Is it awareness? Is it assertiveness? Is it techniques? Or is it recovery? So the last aspect of awareness that I'm going to ask you to do has to do with the physical awareness, because the physical and spatial awareness connects to assertiveness and to techniques very directly. So I'm going to ask you to do a little quiz right now, just a pop quiz. Hopefully you'll do okay. So for this pop quiz, I am going to ask everyone to close their eyes if possible. If you do not feel safe closing your eyes, then you really could just lower your eyes and lower your field of vision till you can only see just what's around you, just below you. And if it's hard to close your eyes, then you could cover your eyes with your hands. Otherwise, just close your eyes. And right there with your eyes closed, from where you're sitting or standing, I want to ask you to point to in the direction of an exit from the room you're in. What's one way you could get out of this room if you really had to? And then lower your hand without opening your eyes. And now I want you to point to another way to get out of this room. Is there a second way out of this room? If that first one wasn't available, point to the second way to get out of this room. And lower your hand without opening your eyes. Now I want you to point to a fire extinguisher, a fire blanket, or a source of water, something else I could use to put out a fire if I needed to in this room. And then lower your hands without opening your eyes. I want you to point to something in this room that you could hide behind if you had to. Is there any place in this room that you could hide, a hidey hole? And then lower your hand. I want you to point to something in this room that you could pick up and use as a weapon if you had to. That you could pick up and use as a weapon if you had to. And lower your hand. Okay, and then I want to ask you to open your eyes and look around your space and grade yourself on your quiz. See how you did. Did you do really well? Did you miss it all? Did you get everyone? I see some people are like, yes! Yes, I did it. So if you are in your own space, maybe, hopefully it gives you a leg up. And yeah, absolutely. I know in my little space, I have every single thing available to me. I have drawers full of weapons over there, really obvious weapons like big knives and things like that. And I also have lots of weapons available to me that are even just within hand's reach. My cell phone, which is a super nice hard weapon to use, pens. Dare I say it, I even have a little statue of Kuan Yin I could use for a weapon if I had to. I'm sure she would forgive me. I have jars of water. I have all sorts of things. And it's my space, so I'm very aware of what the exits are. And sometimes I will lie in bed and take myself on this little journey of awareness of my surroundings, and I'll take it further and further. I'll say, well, if door 1 is not available, door 2 is not available, then the windows, the 2 opening windows are not available. Then what would I do? Could I break this other window? What could I do? What would be my other options? Could I break this door? I've spent quite a bit of time thinking very hard about whether or not I could kick through my door if I needed to. I test it to see how hard is it hollow? And this level of spatial and safety awareness. So some of this is about fire. It's about, in California, about earthquakes, and other places about things like tornadoes, hurricanes. In our current context, it's about things like active shooters or violent insurrectionists. It is about the police. I've had to step, not in my space, but had to step outside my own door and use my self-defense skills to defend my home from the police coming into it. In this home, at least twice, and in several homes that I've lived in, I've had to do that. So thinking through these things is a way of activating a self-defense mind. And some of us might feel, I don't want to think through these things because it's going to make me more afraid. And if you know that that is true for you, then of course, take it easy, be gentle, think through the version of it that doesn't feel like it's too triggering, that it doesn't make your nervous system go too out of whack. For many of us, though, for many people I have encountered, and I know for myself, that what is true about self-defense, taking care of myself, fighting back, is that I am unconsciously, subconsciously running a kind of worry track almost all the time, whether I know it or not. And so if I don't actually address these things out loud, they just continue running, and I have no say or input into sort of what influences how I think about my own safety. Whereas if I give myself moments, not all the time, but give myself moments to think these things through, then I'm activating it, I'm shedding light on it. And if I shed light on a thing, it might at first be like, whoa, I didn't know all these scary possibilities were here dwelling with me. And very quickly, it will then reduce levels of anxiety. Certainly, partly what can help that is that if I'm aware of it, I can take action about it. If I am aware of it, I can make choices to do something different. If I don't have a fire extinguisher, if I don't know what weapons might be helpful, if there is no place to hide, if I don't have an escape route planned. Second thing is that when you're not in your own home, as you are walking to your car, as you're going to the corner store, when you're going to workplaces or school places or other people's houses or other places. These days, I only really ever go to the grocery store. So even in my own grocery store, I play the game there. And then I'm in an unfamiliar environment and the game becomes more challenging and more interesting. So increasing my level of awareness.
Aminta, I just wanted to let you know that we're at time. So if you can wrap up in the next 2 or 3 minutes.
Yes. And oh, it is. We're over time. We're 1 minute over. Okay, last thing I want you to do is to stand with me, standing on that solid ground. And we're going to use our own voices. So for this, you can mute yourself if you're not already muted, but I will stay unmuted. And I want you to use your own voice to say that sentence out loud. So it sounds like this: I am worth defending because I am lovable. So say it with me. I am worth defending because I am lovable. And I want you to back that up by standing in that solid stance. I want you to bring your hands up where they're available and present, where you can use them. And then I want you to think of one thing, one fear, one worry, one situation, one person, one thing that you want less of, want to let go of, want to break through. And we're going to do one technique into the air. And it could be a simple technique using the heel of the palm. If you like punches, it could be a punch. If you're more of a chop person, it could be a chop or a spear. Doesn't matter. You're going to use your own hands. I'm going to use them both at once. And I'm going to say the thing out loud that I want less of in my life. So I'll show you what it will look like. It will look like this. 1, 2, 3. Hate! So I'm using my voice and I'm using my hands and body at the same time, drawing up the strength from the ground. So do it with me if you're able. 1, 2, 3. Hate! And one more time. 1, 2, 3. Racism! Great. And shake out the body, shake out the shoulders. And thank you all for being here. Have a great rest of your conference. Bye, folks.